Good afternoon, brothers and sisters. This is Sister Lil. Today is Friday, February 9th, 2024, and I'm just going to do a summary of my series that I was doing on the abuse of the Black church. We're going to summarize all of this. First of all, I'd like to say the Black church has not only had its dark side, it certainly has had its bright side, its supportive side. It's been a refuge for those of us of African descent, particularly our grandparents and our parents, when there was no other place where a man or a woman felt esteemed, they could go to the Black church. Because the Black church was where you got a chance to dress up, you got a chance to show your talents, your skills. You just were almost like in a natural place for you to grow. But of course, you could not stay in the confines of the church, the building. You had to come out and go into regular society. And that's when it was proven to you that you were not like the dominant society. The Black church provided, first of all, if the preacher or the teachers were teaching adequately, they provided information and the means to become born again, where you understood what it meant to be redeemed back to the Father, to invite Jesus Christ to come into your life and to be your Savior. They also provided family. There were people who felt alone and they didn't have anyone. When you go to that church building, those brothers and sisters there became your family. However dysfunctional they were, and whatever toxicity they brought to the building, they were your family members, and you kind of almost had a love and a hate relationship for some of the people because you realized they were your family, but yet you realized you couldn't trust them with certain things and you didn't always like them. This was a place where you were able to have to socialize. I mean, in some of the Black churches years ago used to have what they would call socials. And they would have social nights where you could go and purchase ice cream and just sit and talk and enjoy each other. So the Black church provided that means for you. It also provided support when you were hurting and you were not doing well. Many times there were some authentic brothers and sisters who were born again, and they would reach out and touch you and pray for you and offer you the support you had, offer you the encouragement that you had that you needed, offer you the exhortation where if you needed to be told that you were doing something incorrectly and letting you know that so you could come back into the fold and do what you needed to do. It also offered leadings, teachings, and demonstrations for leadership because there were people who had leadership skills. They were mentored in a way, not like they're doing today, but in a way they started putting you up on the piano or putting you up to lead a song or putting you up to do speech things when they saw your talent and it gave you a chance to feel good about yourself. Some children who had very poor self-esteem, but they had a very big gift. And sometimes it was that gift that sealed the hole between feeling totally unaccepted and being included because the gift made room for them. I don't understand this, and Father does, but I've noticed this about people many times when they can do something exceptionally well. They have something that is just as weak or weaker than what they can do well. And that is true with me. There are some things that I can do exceptionally well. And it's almost like I have islands of ability, 100% here and 50% there. But if you would submit yourself to Father, He will allow you to come to a point where your strengths can cancel out a high percentage of your weaknesses. So we've talked about the good side of the Black church, and we have seen that the Black church has done some good things. It's been a source of refuge. And I did talk before about the political part, but that's on the darker side because we really shouldn't be getting politics mixed up in the church. But the church has provided um, a lot of help and comfort for the Black members because in society at one time, we could only do the jobs that were laborers, labor jobs, jobs that were menial and very low salary. So we didn't have means of being able to go to work dressed up. At the church, it gave you a sense of style and how to dress. And of course, it's long gone now. I was just visiting by invitation at a black church. As a matter of fact, the Black Baptist Church in Ypsilanti, Michigan, and it's unusual that black churches, those women were laid. I mean, not anymore. They come to church now with jeans on, whatever else they want to do. I believe two of the reasons for the dressing down. Number one, a lot of our churches here in Michigan have begun to mingle with people of the opposite culture, and you found out they never did put a lot of emphasis on boutique dressing and all of that. They came to church decently dressed, but then after we mixed in with them, we found out we didn't have to be dressed and we just relaxed and went about our way. And I think the second thing of it is that many people have professions and they can wear conservatively business clothes every day, and they or even dress up if they want to, and they don't have to put. It's not so important anymore to be so well groomed on Sunday. Even though the well groomed women, I think, they still really really look good, and I do know a lot of the brothers probably would prefer to see a lot of the women are well groomed because you get a lot of compliments when you take time and put your clothes together. But we're going to get off of that and get onto the dark side. We talked about the dark side of the black church. We talked about sexism and how the women were used to cook barbecue, sell chicken dinners. Nothing is wrong with making dinners at church and having time to fellowship together. I'm not talking against that, but they were used to raise money for anniversaries and do all of those things. But yet they were told in some denominations that you could not go up on the podium. That was only for ordained ministers. And of course, they didn't ordain women. And you you couldn't teach any classes where you would be over men. However, that was hypocritical because who were teaching the teenage boys and who was teaching those Sunday school classes? I don't think the deacons were doing that, were they? And if you felt that way, you should have been teaching the boys. The deacons or someone else should have been teaching those boys when they reached a certain age. But you put them off on those women because actually, when it really comes right down to it, unless you've got a calling or gift, a lot of people do not want to do children's ministry. When they're young, they require too much of parenting. And we do know parents have different parenting styles, and you don't know what home the child is coming from, how they've been groomed at home, and all of this becomes a problem. When they get to be in puberty and teenage years, they're too hard to manage. So nobody really wants to do those classes. If you are teaching an adult class, you want to keep that adult class because you expect adults to come in and sit down and behave themselves. If they don't have anything to contribute to the class, they're not going to talk and throw paper across the floor while you're teaching. However, I'm pretty sure Father looks at the children's ministry as being very, very important because many children do not have parents who are believers. And if they say they're believers, they may not be followers and they do not get that demonstration of who Jesus Christ is in the home. The home is the place to prepare and to teach the children. The church should only be confirming what you're teaching at home or giving you support in what you're teaching at home. But it is our responsibilities. I trust myself way more than I trust a preacher or anyone else to groom my child. That is my job. I want to make sure they understand what I understand and what I believe and not just grabbing up something because somebody else says it. So that was the way sexism was really, really shown in the church. Women were really, really, I think, taken advantage of. And this is not to argue about whether or not you think a woman should preach in from the pulpit, whether or not a woman should be up on the podium, because this has been set aside for only clergy. However, my understanding is that when Jesus died, the curtain was ripped. But you know, that's their way, which didn't make any sense because the choir is directly behind the minister's chair that he sits in. So if that place is set aside only for ordained people and people with license, why would you have the choir back there? But again, you know, each to his own. We don't have to get off into that. Classism was very, 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 very high in the black church. There was what we call the big dogs. These were the people who had large amounts of money, and they usually had high salaries. They may not have all been professionals, but they had money. So they pretty much can pay large amounts of money, and they had more control with the pastor than what the people in the middle that kind of sat out there and went under the radar, but they paid their offerings and in the tithes, but they just kind of like was by the wayside. Then we had the what we considered the low class people, and that were the people who some didn't have a car. They had to come to church on the church bus. Some were single parents, and they had more than one child, and they had difficulty with their children. They were struggling, and they may very well be getting food from the food pantry at the church, but nobody paid much attention to them. It was always that upper crust that you had to keep happy because you wanted to make sure if they left there, the pastor was going to be aware of how much they were taking with them because they were taking tithes and offerings. And for people who still believe in tithes, you think of what 10% of your salary would be if you were working at Henry Ford's or you were working at Chrysler's or GM's or even for a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a nurse, you're getting a large amount, so they don't want that to leave. And I think they pander to those people. Because a friend of mine was telling me that that's one of the reasons why she thinks holy conduct is not talked about at church anymore. People cannot afford to make everybody angry because a lot of people there, they are married 2 or 3 times. Their daughters and sons are living in fornication. Some are living with their boyfriends. The ones who are not there fornicating, their kids a lot of times are on drugs. So you can't afford to offend them. But this is not God's way. God's way is to tell me the truth. And if I don't want to take it, then that's on me. And then we had ageism, which ageism in the black church, I must say, is not a big problem as far as I could tell when I was still there. I do think they treated fairly their senior citizens. They visit the nursing homes, and the ones who were in leadership as they got older, they were given a lot of respect. So ageism wasn't too much of a problem, but bullying and intimidation, oh my God. Bullying in the black church was just right on. I mean, the pastor would get up from the pulpit and dog out someone from the pulpit without calling his name, which was very coward. Because if you are a man of God, you should be able to call that person or that family in and ask and present it to them with emotional intelligence. I've been sensing such and such and such a thing. Can you tell me if what I'm sensing is correct? If so, how do you think we can fix this? And if you get down to the point where you can't fix this, then you say, well, you know what? I will pray for you. You go home and ask God to show you where to go. If you're needing to go to another congregation, then you can go to that congregation. What I want is for your soul to be saved when Jesus comes back and for you to live the best life in Christ you can live. But we didn't do that. Intimidation. I mean, get up and throw off. And I think in my generation, they call it fronting you off. Oh, he would put out such and such a thing. I ain't gonna have this here in this congregation. I ain't gonna have this here in my church. Putting you on notice. So just before you get a chance, get it in your mind to say something about something or to present yourself in a certain way, he's letting you know he's gonna whack you off at the knees. So the black church certainly has its toxicity, but it has some of its good places. Um, when I was young growing up, I grew up in the Baptist church, the Missionary Baptist Church, and I saw a lot of things there that were not godly, but I did have a love for the church. And I can say there are many gifts and talents in the Black church. I know there are those of you who do not believe that we should be identifying a church by its nationality. And I can get where you're coming, but I'm speaking from the standpoint of as a Black woman, having been in the church where most people look like me. Once in a while, you might have a woman who was married to a man who looks like me, but most of them, a white woman that was married to a Black man, but most of them looks like me. And I do believe that in the Black church, a lot of people needed therapy. They have behavior disorders, some mental illness. And if we can work on ourselves and we can get our all of these insecurities and these behavior disorders taken care of and get in the front of Jesus Christ, the Father, and the Holy Spirit, and ask them to show us ourselves, and we become healthy. Because right now, this organism that we're dealing with, called the Black church, or called it, most of the churches, is very sick. And you will be as well as the sickest person in your congregation. So this organism is sick, and we need to get it fixed. And we can get it fixed. If you don't believe in therapy, you can get it fixed by going to the feet of Jesus. That's the best therapy you can have, is going to the feet of Jesus. But some people have been damaged in ways where they need maybe some therapy. They need somebody to point out, why are they behaving in the way they behave? Am I bullied? Why do I have a need to bully? Why do I hate certain people? Why, all of these things. Answer these questions. And actually, if you do therapy at the feet of Jesus, you don't have to be afraid to ask any question, because Father already knows your mind. And if we come together as a healthy, whole organism, we will be the picture of Jesus Christ and who he was when he walked down here on earth, because he was our example. God bless you, my brothers and sisters. Have a very blessed night in Jesus Christ. Good night.